staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe. Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Got myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, got myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Realize life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and breathe and connect to myself and know that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So when I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress. The rain be looking like when blessings drop in. And so I got myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, here we go. Yeah. Let's do this. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. In times of test, let no harm beset me, oh my Lord, oh my Lord. Funk, thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, depressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, I late in the thick of it all. I wonder, how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe? Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Got myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. I needed me some rainy days, so I needed me some rainy days, so for the weary, so we teary eyes realize life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and breathe and connect to myself and know that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So when I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress. The rain be looking like when blessings drop in. And so I got myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, here we go. Yeah. Let's do this. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. In times of test, let no harm beset me, oh my Lord, oh my Lord.
Good evening, everybody. It's Saturday evening, the 26th of September, and this is Divided We Stand. I've had a very busy week in politics, a very busy week on Divided We Stand. And it made me think a little bit. Actually, I have to give credit to my wife, Ronnie, who brought this up tonight at the dinner table. And we've often done thought experiments like this, and when I introduce our co-host tonight, we'll get into this more deeply. But I've often wondered about what would have happened had had this world not had the Dark Ages, had this world not had the library in Alexandria burned down. And we know, and I don't know enough about the Dark Ages, but I do know roughly 500 years, and they were stifling pretty much any type of progress. And we were going back and forth at the table trying to come up with an idea of when we would have had computers in the United States had there been no Dark Ages. And we were going back and forth between Lincoln's time and Washington's time, literally during the 1700s. And it's a real possibility because everything that we have, our phones and our computers are dependent on what people invent and what is passed down from one generation to another. And it's really a shame when you think about it. When we have the Dark Ages, no progress doesn't occur. And think about it. I mean, if we had everything we had here now back during Washington's time, how much would things have changed for us? And probably much for the better. And this is a classic example of how that type of thinking from the Dark Ages, if it occurs now, what will that mean for us in the future? Because we already know we've lost. Because people back then were just as smart as we were now, if not smarter, because they didn't probably have the environmental concerns. But they just didn't have the prior experiences and knowledge to do it. And it's a real issue, and it relates to today. And that's why I have our expert commentator, David Price. Oh, no, I shouldn't have said that. It's the guy who has nothing better to do on Tuesday nights. There
This
he
is
is.
what happens when they give you, in life, there's the A, the B, the C, the D, and the F team. This is what happens when you're given the F team, because that would be Brian. Welcome, bro. Oh, wait a minute. You're supposed to welcome me. And I never
I
could
am
tell
welcoming you,
with your
Dave.
introductions. One week I'm somebody else, and then I'm a co-host. And I just like I said, I'm just a guy who has nothing to do ever. It sounds like. So I just kind of hang around, ladies and gentlemen. What I do, seriously, I just hang around and wait for Brian to call. My studio behind me is not real. Of course, it's a green room screen.
That's not real?
Not behind me, no.
Oh, I thought that was your bedroom. Jesus Christ,
No,
Dave.
Brian. I'm in our bedroom.
Jeez.
But Judy said tonight,
Okay.
my wife said, don't show the bedroom because I think there's a wrinkle in the bed or something. I don't know. But anyway, Brian, is always good to be here.
Yes,
And
Dave.
two things to begin. Boy, was that an understatement in the beginning. A lot to talk about. Um, we're not going to because we need to eat and sleep and have other lives. We could probably start this show now and not run out of things to talk about, almost not minute by minute,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly hour by hour from now until whenever. What I'm starting to call, I'm calling it phase one, phase two, and phase three. And tonight I'll kind of explain that. But until phase one, just if we just went till phase one. The other thing that I want to pick up from your introduction, uh, I love your wife, Ronnie. She's a great thinker. Why she married you, I have no idea. But maybe you shouldn't have those discussions at the table, simply because then I've seen you, I've been at your table, and then Ronnie says something really smart, and then you say something really dumb, and then Ronnie says something really smart. I just don't. It's probably a challenge to your marriage. But I will say the only comment I will say, it is fascinating We can, if you want to talk about some alternate history, it's really a great segue to something else. But I would say this: Donald Trump would have been a stupid man in the dark ages. Donald Trump is a stupid man today. Uh, and what I mean by that is, throughout history, we've had good leaders, bad leaders. Some people believe by their very nature, leaders are automatically somehow um, bad. I don't know. The great argument, you want another historical argument? I spent a lot of time today in the American History Museum here in Smithsonian. Second day it was open since March, so I wanted to get there. But, does the man, or should we just say the human, because, certainly could be a woman, should be a woman more. Does the human make the moment, or does the moment make the human? Was Lincoln, Hitler, Trump? They're really interesting debates. But the bottom line is, right now we are in trouble. We have a bad leader. Unfortunately, the big trouble is there are two types of people out there who aren't with us. One are those who don't see that he's a bad leader. I spent a lot of time, which we'll talk about later, with a large group of them today. And then the other kind would be Mitch McConnell and company, who are using him to get what they want. And so at this point, which it makes absolutely no sense at all, this election is still up in the air.
Right. Right. Well, again, I think it was important to bring up that idea, that concept that, that first of all, not only is science important.
How did I tell you? Nope. ACB. Go ahead, ACB. There you go. Just remember AOC, right, is the good, and then ACB is the not so good one. Well, yeah, you could say well, it might be Amy Conan Barbarian or whatever, right? Oh yeah. Mhm. We could talk. I've done quite a bit of research, not that I'm an expert on her, but yeah, let's put it like this. We'll start with this. Um, Her religion is her base, and when I say base, I'm saying where she comes from, who she is, what she's done, what she wants to do. The contrast with Donald Trump, and I thought of this, watching well, not watching, I never watch it, but right after, when it was official, you had a man in the White House with no base nominating a judge who has a very strong base, but I'm afraid her base right now is
Check.
not that shared by the majority of the American
Dave,
people.
can we hold for one second?
Sure. Do you have to go to the
They're
bathroom?
saying no. They're saying we don't have any sound, but I see on my levels, ladies and gentlemen, that my microphone's working, and it says that the Skype microphone is working. I don't know.
This is
Anybody can make a comment. I know Rudel Zavadno mentioned that I have no audio,
Now,
but
wait a minute. Let me ask the audience out there. Does Brian have no audio and I do? Or do both of us have no audio? And the reason I say that, if I do have audio, is that would be a great show. Nobody to hear Brian and everyone to hear just me.
well
So
then
would somebody please report in, hear
also
Brian, can't hear Dave, can't hear both.
test.
It
Okay.
shows, I'm hearing everybody on my end.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. So, Rudel, did you hear my introduction about the Dark Ages? Yes or no? And then we can move on from there.
By the way, hey, Rudolph, if you can hear me.
we have a 20-second delay, Dave, so it's going to take.
I know.
And once we get this, folks, we'll be all right.
Maybe.
So, did you hear the introduction about the Dark Ages? Yes. We're good, Dave. Here we go.
All right, cool.
All right. I think we're good. Go ahead, Dave.
Now, unfortunately, I said we're talking about the technical problems. If that ever happens, ladies and gentlemen, and you can hear me but not Brian, I would say that would be an excellent show. Unfortunately, we're working on some technology which would allow you to choose to mute Brian but never mute me. So once we get to that, we'll be fine too. Where the hell were we, Brian? Before?
Well, look, I talked about the Dark Ages,
Right.
and then I mentioned the Supreme Court justice said this is going to be more than just Roe v. Wade, and then you came in, you started your commentary, and I said, this anti-science attitude can be a lot more dangerous than just Roe versus Wade.
Well, see, oh God, I'm not Socrates or any of the great philosophers, but I'll try to bring this in. In America, as indeed in the world, but we're going to speak tonight about America. We'll devote a show to America and the world sometime, or the world. But there are really three kinds, I guess, of people that are concerned right now in terms of where the world is headed. You've got people who are very concerned because science says we're really in trouble. I mean, it really does. There's 97% of the scientists say that climate change, global warming, the destruction of the planet as we know it, wherever level you're on, whatever's happening is real. Then you've got a group of people who have strong religious opinions, and they can see it informed that way. And, that's not so bad. And then you have quite a large group, again, which I spent a lot of time with today, who say it's God's will and we shouldn't be concerned. And if you go back to the Dark Ages, some of what caused it was really, you really want to go there. What we have today, the Islam world, right? We owe them a huge, huge debt of gratitude. They saved the learnings of the Greeks and the Egyptians, while these, for lack of a better term, what do we call them? Vandals, whatever, Visigoths, the Goths are running around, chopping people's heads off, and we don't read, and all that. So, yeah, the world would be different. But when you say not that much different today, I mean, you're right. Okay, today, if you deny that science is real, wow. And if you deny that science is real based on some idea in your head that God is greater than science, I would love, we won't live long enough, Brian. I've thought about this. There's a good shot, I think, there really is, that someday humankind, if we don't destroy ourselves, if we live that long, we'll find out that God is actually science, right? God is concepts, not the man with the white beard.
Right, but Dave, if I'm going to interject there.
Yeah.
I could see a way you could say that, and here's how I would approach it.
Right.
If God is the most complex thing in the universe as we know it,
right,
then that would be the God, because in a sense we're gods. Like right now, our doctors are gods because as far as we can know, I mean, our physicists, they are the most intelligent thing in the universe. So in a sense, we have our gods, but they're not very powerful.
And again, my message to everyone, God fearing, God hating, God denying, God agnostic, not sure, wherever you are, is no matter. It doesn't matter. While we're here on Earth, our time, we have to do what's right for the planet, for ourselves, for others, and collectively. The greatest debate in American freedom is this. You have individual liberty. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't live as individuals. We live in a group. And so there's always going to be conflicts between what I want to do and what someone else wants to do, and between what I want to do and the group wants to do. And that will be debated till the end of time, no matter what form of government we have. Um, so I think, it's an apt way. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many people had the dinner conversation you and Ronnie had tonight about how different. And I'm not so sure. I mean, that's the fun part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if, and that doesn't matter. But you got to what if first, because I think it is safe to say two things. One is definitely safe to say our world would be different. Okay, our world would be different. And secondly, almost as safe to say, if science is going to lead us, and certainly it does in terms of health, different things like that, the world would be better, probably.
Sorry about that, Dave. All right.
It's okay.
Okay, so in terms of what's happened this week as far as the Supreme Court justice, we know that she's nominated. It looks like it's going to be an easy win for the Republicans because they're going to play.
Brian, can I interrupt you just for a minute?
Sure.
It already is. It's a done deal. There's nothing.
Okay, so you don't see anything in terms of
there's nothing
that
that
can stop
is going to. There's nothing out there that I can see. Now, remember, there's always the unseeable, right?
Right.
Let's be completely ridiculous if you want to. Tonight, when we on the East Coast go to bed, aliens land, and whatever. Okay, that could, but no, it will play out. I think, and it's interesting. My comments tonight will always be prefaced this way. Every comment that I make, we might want government to be moral. We might want it to be just. We might want it to be a number of things, fair, right? But government, no matter what government, is really about two things: power, well, three, I guess. Power, who has the power, and who doesn't have the power. In this particular case, by having Donald Trump in the White House, and that's why it's so important that we get rid of Donald Trump in the White House, and having Republicans in safe control of the Senate, and that's why it's so important that Democrats, or I prefer liberal thinkers, which they all have charge meetings. I'm a liberal first, and then a Democrat second, because I would be a liberal. If the Republicans were liberal, I would be a liberal.
Right.
But the idea of it is they have control. Now, the other thing to remember is they're doing nothing illegal. There's not a thing they have done, Brian.
You're just talking about the Supreme Court nomination.
Oh, no, just the Supreme Court nomination. Now, unethical, okay, destroying past precedent. And I often question, you were look at the Dark Ages. I often question how civil it was, right? Everybody's, it was so much more civil then. Well, shit, they had people on the floor of the House and the Senate shooting, beating each other if you go back in history. And all
there was a lot of
stuff.
violence. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but I think there was kind of in the Senate, at least in my lifetime, which begins in 1952, there was kind of a feeling, okay, I'm going to equate this, and if we get 1,000 phone calls, I'm blaming you. There's a feeling in New Jersey that state police are automatically better officers than municipal police, right? Now, I don't know if that's true, but that's the feeling. And I think there was a feeling that the Senate was kind of civil, and you would extend certain courtesies, right, to each other. If you study, and I have been looking at it a little bit this week, go back and look at Republicans who joined Democrats to put somewhat liberal judges through. And of course, we don't have that now. So certainly it shows that Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, and the Republican senators are using their power very well, very well. Now, there's a caveat there. I'm not inside Mitch McConnell's head, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
But I've struggled with that ever since I encountered Mitch McConnell. I really don't get his game, but I think I finally do. I think his legacy, what he wanted, he just got.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power. In a country that isn't conservative, his legacy will be he believes that he fought the good fight against the bad people and ended up with a 6-3 count. Now, the other thing, Brian, to remember, and this is to everyone, the 6-3 is bad, but do you realize they've appointed more than 200 federal judges?
Yes, I do know that.
And I know you know that,
Right.
but some people don't. And the difference is federal judges, of course, will rule just the way anyone else will, according to their beliefs. But the Supreme Court, in fact, there's some cases that I'm going to call it, let's see, ACB, Amy Coney Barrett, that she's ruled on as an underjudge, where she basically said, it doesn't matter what I say right now. I'm going to say what I have because you can't go against the Supreme Court, which you can. Right? So one of the good things about the court, it's the end. There's nowhere to go. Right? If the court rules it legal or illegal, there's no appeals process. Right. You can bring it up under another court. You can bring it up in a different way. You can take it to the people, but that's it. So that's kind of, there's two dangers. One is the federal judges, and they're there. They're not going anywhere. And the other now is the Supreme Court will be 6-3. Now, you and I have been debating this the whole time. Of course, as always, I've been proven right every time now.
Until
I always
you're
said
wrong.
That John Roberts, and really on the philosophical and political scale, he is the most moderate of, we'll say, the 6 conservatives now. But that's like being the
Right.
the tallest of the Zulus or the smallest of whatever. They're all conservatives.
Correct.
However, he could be considered somewhat of a swing vote on a 4-4, which it was before. And we did see that on a couple of very huge issues. Now it doesn't matter what John Roberts does.
Right.
Because if they have the 5 votes, they have the 5 votes. I did look today, and they don't know yet. I couldn't really narrow it down. It's very hard to narrow it down. But the basic idea right now is Clarence Thomas is the most conservative justice.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I mean,
Well,
you have the
but I'm
one
just saying,
question ever since he started. What is it with Clarence Thomas? What I mean, it's
and
almost
you're not
as
gonna
though
answer
he
that.
doesn't do any thinking. He just
you're not
automatically.
you're not gonna. There's no sense in. That's like asking why are apples different
Right.
than pears if you don't know science, right? I mean, we don't know. I have no personal contact with Clarence Thomas other than this. He was speaking at the Supreme Court. He was speaking at National Archives, and I was so excited to go because I just wanted. I'd like to see. Okay, here's the enigma, Clarence Thomas. He'll talk. He won't be there at the Supreme Court. He hadn't asked a question in 4 years at that point, or 5, or something like that. And so we go, and here's what happened. I'm going to be off the numbers, but I'm going to be close. Say there are 264 seats in the auditorium at the National Archives. Just say there are. And of course, this is big news. So CNN, all the networks are there. So they're going to take up a couple rows. And Clarence Thomas, smart move on Thomas's part, sent out enough invitations that for the general public, and I was there, I counted them, I talked to the director after, 13 members of the general public got in. So to me, I just walked away saying, well, Mr. Thomas must be somewhat either scared of having his opinions questioned or being, didn't even allow for it. So, so Clarence, so I wanted to find out where Judge Amy would be. And the best we can come up with, if anybody wants to know, is she clerked under Judge Antonio Scalia. Scalia is on record as saying he was very, he was very impartial toward his clerks. They were kind of interchangeable. You know what I mean? He wanted to be good. He was a brilliant legal mind, except he was conservative and Catholic, which Amy is both. And one of the few people he ever praised. Now remember, he said, "Man, isn't that Amy something?" And so, if you really want to look at where will she go, I think she will definitely be in the Scalia mold. My concern, even more with her, though, Scalia, for all his failings, if you're a liberal, he was a staunch, strong supporter of the First Amendment. And that's a good thing.
Well, can I stop you there for a second, Dave?
Sure. Sure.
I need to get your input on this because we know there are going to be hearings because you have to have hearings. And
Correct. Well, you don't actually. You know what's interesting? I did research that you do not.
you don't think that the Democrats are going to simply just let the hearings go, or could they?
Well, there are. I will say this tonight. I don't. I can't identify the two members, but the two members of the committee, right? The Democrats who are on the pre-interview committee, right?
Mhm.
Because of course, before you bring somebody up, you interview. They're refusing to participate, calling this a sham and a travesty and
Yeah.
un-American.
Okay, so there's
So I don't know,
oh,
but yes, normally,
okay.
Brian, what you're saying is
So there are two situations here that I want to talk about,
okay.
and they're not really related. But first of all, so let me just I'll say both of them because they're kind of quick. You have
Okay.
Dianne Feinstein, who's the head of the Judiciary Committee. She's 87 years of age. She's obviously been forgetting a lot of things when she's in these hearings in the past. A big problem because she's getting destroyed out there. You need to have people right on top of things.
Can I answer that before we go on to
Sure.
your second question? Before I forget it. Well, here's the problem. Dianne Feinstein is already destroyed, and here's why. Not because of what you said, although that may be true. Of course, being a federal judge, ACB had to go before the Senate for confirmation. Every federal judge does. And in the course of that, Dianne Feinstein said this quote. It's all over the papers. And this is what actually made Judge Amy the darling of the conservatives. It was almost Star Warsian, the quote. And I'll probably get it wrong, but I'm going to get a quote. She said, I can see the dogma. Now, Amy is a Catholic, but she's a very different breed of Catholic. We can talk about that later. One that only has 2,000 members to the knowledge in the world. She said, I can see the dogma is strong within you. Like Darth Vader, the force is strong within you. And Dianne got crucified for saying that because they, being the conservatives, turned it around and said, it's fine to attack a judge in the sense of how does religion influence your decisions. I watched a couple of times when people brought that up with Scalia, and he handled it. Well, I thought not that I agreed with him, but he handled it well. And so that really, it's interesting that Dianne Feinstein, in a way, by doing, asking a question that's legit, but not legit in that idea of politics, actually did that. So, I wouldn't have Dianne Feinstein appear at this hearing
Right.
if you could
And
help
I agree with
simply
you there.
because that will add fuel to. Remember when Dianne Feinstein said?
Right. Now,
I just thought that was interesting.
the
He
next
said that.
question I have relates to, again, the hearings. Let's just assume that there will be
Right.
hearings.
And I think that's a relatively safe assumption.
Right. They did go after Kavanaugh. We saw those moments where Amy Klobuchar said, well, I don't have a drinking problem. That was great. And he got all upset. I don't either. That kind of thing. But should we concentrate on November, or do you just, you play it out and you're tough from A to Z until November, and you attack Barrett in the hearings? You go after her, and you never know what do you think would be the proper way to go about that?
First of all, I think Kavanaugh displayed, even if there were nothing in his background, he displayed in the hearings to me that he does not have the temperament to be a judge.
Right.
Certainly not a Supreme Court judge. You will not see that from Amy. I don't know her, but I mean, spending as much time as I have recently figuring she would be the nominee.
No, but let me again stop you right there, because Dave, you kind of know her types. Let's say okay, you don't know her.
Well, yeah, well, not me. I mean,
if you
everybody knows
take
her
a
type.
typical religious zealot, and from all intents and purposes, we think that she probably has this idea of the kingdom of God on her mind. How does somebody like that answer the questions, from the tough questions, or does she just evade it like anybody else?
No. See, I think, again, Brian, and I'm going to accuse you of something here, not really accusing you. When, again, I say, oh, Dave always thinks he's right. Oh, Dave. No, but, you see it a little bit different when you're a reporter. You see it a little bit different when you're hanging out down here and going to these things, because you're, kind of up close and personal. But you really don't have any vested interest in it, because I'm not a reporter anymore as such. I'm going to go to Scalia again. I think Judge Scalia actually believed in his heart that his Catholic faith did not influence his decisions, right? Now, they did, okay? But so I think when these judges, if they're true, people, I don't think, like I said, Donald Trump doesn't have a conviction, so it doesn't matter with him. I think Amy could honestly answer, I will not let it. Look at my record. I've never let it. And of course, she's not lying in one sense, right? But it's like any of us. We are all shaped by everything that's happened to us.
Right, because they could simply interpret what they read as her opinion.
I would tell you right now that, my 17 years spent in the Methodist Church, my mother wanted me to stay for 17 years, and I did. And I end up not believing in any organized religion at all. None. No, that did influence me because you know what I mean? It does, because anything you're exposed to influences.
Right, but what I'm saying here is, she does have those influences, but I think what bothers me the most, Dave, is that because she's intelligent, I think of people like Bill Barr, and I think of Brett Kavanaugh, because I never believed Kavanaugh, I never believed Clarence Thomas, that because I think they are liars in general. I mean, because I have to be very skeptical of their beliefs anyway, but that's their business. But it seems to me, Dave, at least from my perspective, that they're going to play around with words, semantic fiat, whatever you want to call it. They're going to use it to manipulate the idea that they are behind it. I mean, that they're going to be fair.
I'm Brian. I put you in the role of every person, right? So when I question you on
yes,
these
you
things,
plural, yes.
You're not you're everybody, all right, or anybody who's sitting in that chair who feels like we do, and that's basically liberal, anti-Trump, and at this point anti-Trump's taken over GOP, and anti anything that goes against the Constitution. All right, so let's do this, Brian. Do you believe that she will, no, let me rephrase it this way. Do you believe that her religious beliefs will influence her decisions? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Correct. All right. Now, the question is not what you believe, what does she believe? And I believe that she doesn't see it that way. Or if she does, she sees it that her religion or her God or her, is a higher calling. Now, I've used that too. We've all used that. You and I taught together. There were times when I did things way out of, what shall we say, the directives of our bosses. And the reason was not that they were wrong, although they were. The reason was that my highest calling was to my students. Now, it's interesting because my decisions only affected my students. Does that make any sense? The problem when you get to be a judge is now there are 9 people. I've said it all along. It's nothing new. I'm not saying because I just discovered it. I said it every election I've ever been involved with, and that would have begun in 1972 with George McGovern. Yes, it's important to have the presidency, but not for the president. It's for the power to have the Supreme Court. So, of course, now there's a third group. So you're saying, and I think you're right, you believe it will. She may or may not, and she may be honest with herself, she doesn't, or she may believe that this is more important. She's kind of on record as kind of running around that. Like, if the Constitution goes against religion, but not her religion. I mean, we always talk about people having the religion. For religion, it's just God, right? I mean, it's the divine order. Let's say that, the divine order. So if the Constitution goes against the divine order, she makes material. What is most interesting to me is that there are 51, I think, right? 51 senators who don't give a shit. They're just going to nominate her no matter what. And if you don't believe that, and I know you do, Lindsey Graham, who I probably have more respect for any murderer tonight in the United States than I do for Lindsey Graham, because the murderer probably was driven to it, and Lindsey is just Lindsey. Lindsey said he slipped Freudian slip, maybe he's slipping too. He just said, before anybody was nominated, if you listen to what he said, we have the votes to confirm the judge.
Okay, Dave.
So what you're saying, bro, I mean, it at this point, it's fun to talk about it. It doesn't matter. She's going to be
Okay,
the
well,
judge.
I know what you're. I get your point. You're saying essentially what you're saying. It doesn't really matter whether she is the type of person who will be fair or isn't fair. What really matters is she actually believes that she's being fair, and
Could be.
Could be.
I say
and
could
she
be.
could be lying too.
Well,
Now,
she could, but you look at people, Brian, and you judge them. This is my judgment. It doesn't mean I'm right. I'll give you. Well, let's stay with the court.
well, I just want to throw a name at you as an
Go ahead.
example, Dave.
Go
We
ahead.
know who Louis Gohmert is. I mean, he's
Yes.
the guy from Texas. He was a judge, and he's the last person you would think could actually be a judge, but he was a judge.
Brian, don't go there. You and I argue all
Well,
the time.
look, but we don't know that she's any better than Louis Gohmert. We really
I'm
don't.
saying she's better. What I'm saying, tell you, you are part of that mistaken. It's ideal and it's nice that everybody who gets a position should be good, would be good.
And
You
it's
know,
it's
to have
it's a
a doctorate,
noble
you're smarter than somebody without that. We don't know that.
perspective. They really should look. At least we can say
should,
from a
but they
technical
don't,
level. No,
Brian.
right. Well, look, if
It's
somebody
politics.
is manning the nuclear power plant, I would expect that our expectations would be that they can run that plant and they can deal with any type of possible emergency. And
you hear what
I demand that these people know. what they're doing.
Now you got another word. Let's look at your two words. You would expect. Well, but can you control
Right.
it?
Well, look,
No.
I
And you would
am
demand.
idealistic.
How are you going to demand?
That's where you and I are. We kind of flip places because I am very rational and pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
You are kind of both pragmatic and idealistic. But in this case, when it comes to politicians, especially Republican politicians,
all politicians, if I think what you're going to say, go ahead.
you aren't. You are very, very cynical toward these people.
Well, yeah, you don't want to know why.
And I
Brian.
get it because they look, they're horrible. And this is why I am not trusting this woman already.
Let's look at this. We're talking tonight, and our theme is kind of really religion and government. We're honing in on one person. Right? It is conceivable to me, and I would hope it be conceivable to others, that people who hear the call from God really hear it. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And they do that. And if you really did that, and it was the God that I believe I studied and still read about, the God Jesus Christ, who technically was the Son of God, but he kind of was, for the time, that's the message. That God said, like, hey, if the Bible were true, but God said, listen, Jesus, come here, son, I got a job for you. Go down there and spread my word. This is what I want, but I'll probably scare the people, so you go down there. All right. And if you get that and you follow Jesus' precepts, you're going to be pretty good, right? Now, does that mean that people who aren't, like Jerry Falwell, like Swaggart, were they good going in? Did they get corrupted? We don't know. Now, with judges, okay, you would expect that going to law school would put you in a certain category, and it does. Do you know what it puts you in, Brian? You can graduate from law school. That's it. That's all it means. Do you think Donald Trump was bright enough to get anything out of Wharton? Wharton's
No,
hard.
I don't see
Bought
any
his way
possible
in,
way. Right.
and once you get in, you're pretty much, unless you walk away from it, you're going to graduate, right? I mean, that's just the way it is in the Ivies. It's just the way it is. So, I mean, I don't expect anything. The other thing is, from my years in reporting, from something I took away is judges in their courtroom are gods. They are, Brian. I had 2 occasions where I was cited for contempt, temporarily detained.
I've cited you for contempt on the show about 18 times.
Well, I know. I
guess I'm in
understand. I
a
mean,
good position.
it's a part of doing business. I mean, in a way, was I scared? Of course I was scared.
Right.
Okay. I've written about, think about this. They're taking me to jail where I've written badly about the officers. I've written badly about the prisoners. And now the judge has said, we're going to get you.
Right.
But the point is, there was nothing you could really do about it at that moment. And because I'll give you one example that I'll never forget. I was a young reporter, and nobody's going to know the names, but I'll use the names just for me. And there was an attorney called Basil Beck, and Basil Beck had hair and down to his ass, and he was just a free spirit. Wouldn't wear socks, had a beard. And Basil was appearing in court, and the judge said, "You will go home and you will dress appropriately, sir." And Basil said, "You do not have the right to tell me that." And the judge said, "If you continue to represent your client, I will find your client guilty for a bad defense." Something like that.
Wow. No, I get what you're saying.
You can do that. You can do that as a judge. I've hung in judge. Not again. I don't mean that. Every time I say that, I get really frustrated at myself. Oh, I had this or I had that. No, in my job, I should say. And so, I do know judges fairly well in terms of how they respond. And they're good judges, bad judges, judges.
Right, but isn't there something different since '93 with Contract with America? Actually, no, it was actually, I forget which justice they said that was the wrong pick. I guess it goes back to Nixon. They said they weren't going to allow this to happen again.
You want to trace a direct line back?
Well, it's the idea that there's something different now, that the Republicans had a plan. So any future nominee, they knew had already gone through some vetting. So in a way, it's not a judge that you have. You have somebody who's literally like a Bill Barr working for you.
Can I ask you something again? You're not responding for Brian. You're responding for the average person. I would have bet that the average person, and they shouldn't have any reason to know, would think maybe something like this. A judge is really good attorney, and on their merits, they become a judge.
Right.
And it's not that way. Everywhere in America, judge is appointed by a political party. Everywhere. Except where you run. And so now you're a judge and a cat. There's no way of getting politics out of our judicial system. There is. It's like this, right? It's intertwined. There's no way. So I really liked what you said. And what is it? What do they say? Even a blind squirrel finds an acorn sometimes. I think you might have found an acorn there, brother. I don't believe in long-term, conspiracies that are covered up, and no.
But this is overt, Dave. Everybody. This is an overt.
Are you gonna let me finish? Or do you want to just show how dumb you are?
You've been speaking for an hour.
Even when I agree with you, I'm agreeing with you.
All right, I'm going to put you on solo here. Okay.
Here's the thing.
Was that a yes or a no?
It was a proved out.
Okay.
Here's what I think happened, and I think it's proving out. Republicans are not stupid people.
Some Republicans are not stupid people.
No, I'm saying the Republican leadership is not stupid. And they know that they are the party of white people, predominantly white men.
Uneducated?
No,
poorly
not
educated.
The leadership, Brian. Forget everything else. And they looked at the coming future maybe 40 years ago. What would that put us at? 1980? No, 50 years ago. Right around Nixon's. Yeah, right around Nixon's time. And they said, man, these demographics
didn't look good to them.
They didn't look good. So what are we going to do? They said, oh, man, well, let's see. What can we do? We're not going to win the presidency. We don't need the presidency. They were smarter than the Democrats. They really were in this sense. We don't need the presidency. We need two things. We need governors.
Right.
We often overlook how much federal power governors have, right?
Or they influence.
And right now, currently, there's more Do you realize, if you really want our viewers to be scared, I would like to save it for another show. I can give you a very realistic way where Joe Biden will win the election and lose. And people will say it's not fair, and it's 100% fair. But we're not going to go there now. But they realize that, and it involves governors and states.
And why wouldn't they go that way? They've done everything so far that has been necessary to win.
I said they might go that way. I didn't say they would. They might. Yeah, I'm not ruling it out. Now, let me get to what you were saying about this political thing,
Right.
right? So, this idea of saying that somehow, look, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was brilliant. Ruth Bader Ginsburg deserves every accolade that anyone can lay before her, right? But you know what? She was a Democrat. If she hadn't been that person, she wouldn't have gotten where she was. The Republicans never would have elevated
No.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So what they did, they realized if we can, and this is pretty much true, and I spent a lot of time there, and it was mentioned tonight, and I said, oh, now I get why I was creeped out there. There's a think tank in D.C. It is the most conservative think tank that isn't filled with complete crazies, called the Heritage Foundation. And almost every single person in the Trump organization came through there. So they built this Heritage Foundation, and they went out and they were confoundedly brilliant in doing this. They found the best conservative legal students, right?
Right.
And they shepherded their career. Now, people say, what do you mean? Okay. Normally, you do not get to be an intern at the Supreme Court unless you're a graduate of an Ivy League school. And basically, it's Harvard and Yale, in the first tier, and then Columbia, Penn down. And Amy is a graduate of Notre Dame Law School. And I would be, I'm not saying she would say it. And I mean, it's nothing wrong with it. They groomed her, not like a Manchurian candidate, right? She's perfect. A conservative woman who can't be say she's an intellectual elitist because she came from, as if there's some difference. Well, there is in people's minds. She's not one of those, the Ivy Leaguers. And you see that a lot. And the Heritage Foundation was behind it. And you see that. Gorsuch, Heritage Foundation. Kavanaugh, Heritage Foundation. Amy, not necessarily there. They keep them kind of away, but shepherded by those people. So what we end up with, think about this, Brian. We end up kind of a fluke, a president who doesn't represent the country, and that's due to the Electoral College. And
we end up essentially with what we have in the federal government right now, where you have these lunatics who went through Trump's own litmus test to implant them to be loyal to the president.
No question. Okay, so let's look at the three branches. The executive side, the president. Donald Trump is a lot of things, but he is ultimately unstable.
Yes.
There's no question about that. And has no fitness for the office to be elected.
Well, any person who lies every time they open their mouth.
It doesn't. Don't go into details. He just doesn't. We don't need to justify it. Now, he has surrounded himself, as he did in business, with a series of yes people. So there is no hope in the executive branch for anything to be sane or normal. The executive branch solely exists now for the purpose of Donald Trump and what he wants that moment.
Right. And he wanted to run it like his company, a private company.
Well, no, he doesn't want to run it. He is running it like his company.
Right.
He's got it. Done. All right. Now, the second branch of government, right, is the legislative. Because of this idea that Idaho is equal to California, 2 senators. What is it? Like, I don't know what it's down to now. 25% of the population has more senators than 75% of the population.
It's a travesty of justice.
It's a travesty with the Electoral College. That's all. Then the third one is the scariest of all. And now, because of these forces working together, we now have the most conservative Supreme Court possibly. Now, I hesitate to do this because I don't know the makeup of every Supreme Court, but I will definitely say in my lifetime. Now, why is the presidency so important? This is a statistic I knew kind of, but I forgot. Richard Nixon got to appoint 4 Supreme Court justices. Think about that. But one of those turned out to be liberal once he got to the court. He wasn't undercover. He just, hey, Keith, Donald Trump, the worst president imaginable, is this. He's going to have 3. Look at their ages, Brian. They're
Well,
all
she's what, 45 or something like that?
no. She's young. She might even be younger than that. I don't know. She's yeah.
Well, she's
But
younger than we
you're
are. That's for goddamn sure.
now we'll talk later about how you battle that. But that's right now. So yeah, right now. Oh my God, it's a lost cause. No, no. Again, simple. Hard to do, but not impossible. Here's the way you negate what is going to happen with Amy. Very simple. Again, hard to do. The American people elect Joe Biden, as they should. Joe Biden survives everything after that election that Trump is going to throw at him and the Republicans. And so he's now our president. Secondly, you get enough senators elected so that the Republicans no longer control the Senate. There's two things about that. They shouldn't control the Senate, and Mitch McConnell controls them. Mitch McConnell, if I could be graphic for a moment, if, as far as politics are concerned, if the Republicans do not get enough senators that he remains Senate Majority Leader, you have politically castrated him. He has no power whatsoever. All he is another Republican senator from Kentucky. So do you have to beat McConnell? No. Would that be great? Amy McGrath is doing a great job to try. It's a huge uphill climb. I talk real well. I sound like the president.
Right, and even as a conservative Democrat, you could say she's a moderate Republican in a way.
It doesn't.
It
matter.
doesn't matter
saying,
because she's streets ahead of.
I hope she does. I hope I'm wrong. I don't see Amy McGrath. I see her running much closer than maybe anybody else. And what's so interesting about that, and here's where tonight, I mean, okay, I don't know more than other people. I don't. It's just like when I taught in the classroom, I didn't know more than my students. I really didn't. But a few things I knew, and I tried to point out to them to help them. And this is one of those things. Right now, I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody out there, 17 or 23, anyway, a large number of Republicans are running. And whatever it's 17 or 23, whatever it is, Mitch McConnell has the lowest national numbers of any of them, Brian. And that doesn't matter at all. Do you know why? Only his numbers in Kentucky matter. And they don't matter either because only the vote in Kentucky matters, right? And it's similar to Biden. I don't really care at all, what his national numbers are. I don't care. But and I don't really care what his numbers are in my state, Virginia, nor my former state, New Jersey. I don't care what his numbers are in Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Arkansas. They're going to go one way against him, and Virginia, New Jersey, California, New York are going to go for him. The numbers that are important are what they call the swing states. But back to this, circling back to where we were. And I am a person who can do that, I think sometimes you have to admire the enemy. And in this sense, I wouldn't have done it, but I have to admire, if you're looking at sheer power, what the Republicans have been able to do. Knowing that in this case, 70% of pretty much the American people, which has to be some of their people, are saying it's really fair to let whoever wins. Now, see, people say that. They're not saying it's fair to let Joe Biden pick or fair to let Donald Trump pick. What they're saying is the next president should get that choice. It's so close. Now, the one argument that I won't even enter into with you or anyone else is, but it's not right what the Republicans are doing. It's not about right and wrong in this case. It's about legality and power. They're within their legal bounds to do what they're doing. They have the power to do it, and ergo, they are
right. And this is basically what Bill Maher was talking about last night, Dave. And he was saying, if you think it's going to get any better, forget it, because power begets power. And right. If the Democrats keep saying things like you're talking about, saying, well, this isn't fair, and they're hypocrites, that's not going to cut it. You've got to actually do something.
Because you know what? People who believe what they're just want they want them to have the power. Look, okay. Let's assume for a moment that abortion is very high, Brian. We're going to make you into a conservative. Abortion is very high on your scale. Who do you want for president, Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
That is so obvious, Dave, that I won't even
Well,
give
who
the
is
answer.
it? Just answer it.
It's Donald Trump.
Right, but people don't they don't always get down to that on the other side.
Right,
So
and I get what
therefore,
you're saying, Dave.
everyone, you can call them your enemy, you could call them they're not with us. I don't care what you call them. Every single person who believes that abortion is a sin and America is committing a sin with every abortion is going to be pretty much with Donald Trump.
Dave, right there, what you're talking about with people. I saw a post from a Trumper. I think it was 2 days ago, and I thought it was hideous to watch. And I wanted. The post said something like this: "There's going to be a time soon when good men are going to have to do really bad things to really bad people." Now, there's a lot on that. First of all, you've got people, Trumpers, thinking they know the difference between right and wrong, and they think they're right.
They think they're right.
And of course,
they're
now
wrong.
that's where we already have a problem because we can go on and debate whether one side has their opinion, one side has their opinion, but it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it matters whether there's logic. You can't argue against the CDC if the CDC is putting out the correct information. You can't say that Dr. Fauci is a liar if you don't have a degree yourself and you cannot prove it. And it's a very dangerous route when not only is your president stupid, but you have people who are completely unethical, but they believe that they're ethical. And I can throw that question back at you that you gave me about the Supreme Court nominee. Do these people
Do that.
actually think they are ethical? And I've done
Certainly
a video
they
on
do.
this kind of thing long ago, but
Certainly they do. They don't sit there and say, I'm going to do something unethical, right? Just because it's unethical.
and I think it has. We get back to this religion thing, which we're going to get to fairly soon, I hope, Dave, because you have a story to tell us. But
Right.
I think that part of it too is this idea that my God's right, and we know that most people don't even read the Bible. Not that it even matter anyway, but they have this idea, this conception of what the Bible is or what God is, and just the very fact that they assume that there is a God, creates a problem. And you have 1 billion people in the Middle East who believe they're right and not. So now you see how we're in a big pickle here, because now we have not only Republicans versus Democrats as the kind of quasi religions or whatever you want to call it, but you still have religion in there because
Brian, that's an excellent term. I just, for sake of argument, if you want to use it, you're welcome to it. I didn't coin it. I call it politics is our secular religion.
Right, but it's deadly now because now we have, first of all, the Christians are on. You get, like, I don't call you a Christian because we know that you're not a practicing Christian, but you came from a Christian family, and you've got those kind of people on our side, and then the other Christian, the white, Pentecostals, they're on Trump's side. So in a way, religion is out of politics in that sense that it's not one religion. Like all Jews are not going to go for Trump. In fact, only 15 will go for him. But my point is this: is that it still had an effect on those people, choosing republicanism to be their religion because they are molded. Their whole perspective is what they think about what is right and what is wrong. And so no matter what I say or what you say, you're wrong, you're the devil or whatever. And it's almost impossible to get out of this, which is why I am so worried.
Well,
they're locked in. That's what I'm saying, Dave.
all night.
They're locked in.
All right, all night, Brian. You're not Brian. The role I'm putting you in is every person. Most people don't really want to hate other people. I mean, I think that's true. Hate can be a horrible emotion. It can be self-destructive. So what happens though?
But you can't. You'll have to tell Keith. That's what I think.
I mean, hold on to that, Keith.
Okay.
I'll be with you in just a moment here. I just want to finish this. So what happens is if somebody believes they are morally right and just and fair, and you believe that they are morally not right, unjust, and not fair, there is no way to meet. There never was, Brian, in the United
Right.
States. There never was. There were a few places once in a while where the Senate being one of those, the House being one, where sometimes you could come together a little bit. But if you look at those, what times were they in my lifetime? Well, we had a huge enemy until 1980, and the communists. Now, I didn't buy the domino theory, but I mean, it was kind of us. And but now we don't have that, right? Or at least,
No, we
I
don't.
mean,
We don't have any of that right
we don't
now.
have, and so we have nothing to rally around.
Absolutely.
This is
Good
interesting.
point. We have
I
nothing to
read
rally around.
I read a science fiction
Oh,
writer.
wait, stop right there just for a
Absurd as
second.
this
One
sounds,
second,
ready,
Dave. Dave, we do.
I'm sorry.
For Republicans, the bad boys become us, not the Reds.
I understand, but I'm talking about a common enemy.
Oh, got it. Got it.
The enemy right now of me is the Republican Party. And the reason they are my enemy is they want to destroy the America that I think should and could be. But there's a Dave Price or millions of Dave Prices who say tonight that I'm their enemy because I don't want or I want to destroy the America they believe. So how do you work that out? You work it out with the ballot. That's how you work it out. It's the only way you work it out. It's the only way we've ever worked it out
Correct.
if we didn't have a common enemy. I just want to finish with this kind of ridiculous thought, but this gives you pause. You started with the Dark Ages. That's something. I read a science fiction author this week who was writing not science fiction, but was writing about. Says, you know what? I almost wish the aliens would land
Right. Here, here.
because then it could be us versus them, not just in America, but around the world.
I'll be rooting
So-
for the aliens, by the way, Dave. Not because you think I'm an alien.
I'll be taking you out, you friggin'
I'm telling you, as long as those aliens get Mitch McConnell, I'm rooting for you.
They're also going to.
I'm giving him the key. Take him. I'll live by your standards.
Obviously, tonight you didn't take the brain damage pills because that's a brain damage statement. But the thing is,
Well, you're coming from a human perspective. I'm coming from the alien perspective.
no, I'm just coming from
You watch too many
the
movies.
reality of human beings. If they don't have a common enemy, will turn on each other. That's all.
All right.
I'm not saying
I
the
can
aliens
take
are
that.
better than us or worse than us or whatever. So, but we don't have to. We may end up there. We don't have to. We, you and I, and everybody who wants a liberal America, which we consider to be more just, more fair, more inclusive, whatever, if we win the power, we don't have to take to the streets, right? But that doesn't mean the conservatives don't have to
Right,
take to the
right.
streets. And it doesn't mean that we will win the power.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that we should win the power.
Well, thinking back to your childhood, Dave, and actually to my childhood too, because we're in close enough of a time period that we can say this.
Yeah,
I don't
you're
know
a
your
baby.
perspective, but I wanted to get it from you. It's
Okay.
the idea that, when I look back to the days where, better dead than red, and the way we thought about it, we had this kind of like, as 10-year-olds, we had this just kind of vague idea about the Russians being, they're our enemies, but we didn't know anything specific. But
It wasn't vague. It was real.
okay, it was
I'm not
real.
saying
There
it
was
should
no
have
doubt about that. But it wasn't
was
the,
real.
the topic every day. But right now, I would suggest, at least from my perspective, and I'll ask you this too.
been. Sure. Certainly.
I think the animosity between the Trumpers and us is far greater from what I can see and what I can experience as a 60-year-old compared to 1966 and 65, in those ages. How about you?
Okay. Like I mentioned earlier, my favorite museum.
You're a little bit away from the mic, Dave.
I'm sorry. I did. My favorite museum in the world is the American History, Smithsonian American History. And it has all kinds of ties. It opened in 1964. Uh, my mother and father did not take me there opening day, but within a couple months we were there. So I've been going there since 1964. And to go back today, all those emotions come in. And things aren't open, and will they ever be open again? And I went to do certain things and couldn't, etc. Okay, so putting that, it's interesting. When you say the past, for me, my past begins March 26, 1952. That's the furthest back I can go because that was the day I was born. What was your birth date, Brian, and year?
The 12th of April, 1960. It was exactly 15 years from the day that Roosevelt died.
Okay, so I am 8 years older than you. And 8 years can make a big difference, not in terms of the time, but what we experience.
Right.
So the first political thing that I knew about Kennedy winning, I was 8 years old, was in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're not going to talk about it tonight, but that is as frightening as anything that has ever happened to me. Okay, we'll come back to that later. The next thing is that crazy period where I was too young kind of for the big civil rights thing. So really, I came of age when the civil rights thing was moving into the Black Power phase. So I was more into Black Power, being a white, that was kind of where it was. But my thing, Gary Peacock's thing, who's listening tonight, Vietnam War, right? And that was pretty bad. But still, it was the idea while we were fighting in here, both of those, it was those big bad communists, even those who didn't, like Jane Fonda and myself, we knew that it wasn't like in the streets. It was generational, a lot of it. Not tonight's not the night. If somebody wants a show sometime where I talk about the fights between my father and I simply over Vietnam, most of them had it. But we kind of, now, when you said, and it's one of the most appropriate things you've ever said on this show, and one of the most right, you said today it's different, and it is different. There is no outside enemy. What's the famous thing from the cartoon Pogo? We have met the enemy, and it is us.
Right.
And that's where we are right now. So this is bad for two reasons. You can compare it to the McCarthy era. You can compare any era you want. You can compare it to the American Civil War. You can compare it to the American Revolution. I don't care what you compare it to. We know how those things ended. We don't know how this thing is going to end. It doesn't look like it's going to end well. It will end or subside or come back. What I'm saying in a different form. So, yeah, so what you said, Brian, I don't see how anyone could argue with you or should. This is worse in that respect because I also think, and I'm sure you grew up with this myth. It's a myth. I mean, it did happen sometimes. Brother against brother, Civil War. That was rare. Basically, if you were below the Mason-Dixon line, you were a Southerner, and a Confederate. Now, it did happen, borderline states. Robert E. Lee, I'm sure he did agonize over should he go with the Union, where it was, or should I stay with my states? I mean, but now, hell, I mean, I'm not going to name names tonight, but I'll name people. And if anybody wants the names, they can contact me later. I have a brother-in-law who voted for Trump. Two of my wife's stepbrothers voted for Trump. My former accountant actually fired me as a client before I could fire her. She's a Trumper. I have people that I've known for 60 years who I have no contact with now, nor care to. Nor should they with me. Colleagues, some who shock me, some who don't. People that I've worked with. Now, since I've been here, no, because where I live is completely liberal. I mean, like I said, 76% for Hillary. It'll be more for Joe this time.
Let me ask you this, Dave, if I may.
Yeah.
I brought this up to you.
Yes.
Earlier this week on a phone call.
All right.
But let's suppose we do have a constitutional crisis, which is going to be just horrific if it happens.
Another word than suppose.
Yeah, in January.
We will have a constitutional crisis.
And again, this is just throwing out kind of a thought experiment. But if you had to bet on a major reason why students across, at least in the big cities, would have to go remote, do you think that could more likely occur from insurrection or some issues on the street, or from the pandemic, or equal chances? Because you agree with me that could be a possibility.
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing, Brian. I'm not trying to hedge my bets. I try to be direct. I'm not saying I'm right, but I try to say this. Here's the uncertainty. It's very simple. It's scientific. It's out there. And I haven't used the word fuck tonight, if you notice, so I'm going to use it now. Any motherfucker out there, and I'll say it to you, I'll say it to anyone, who doesn't believe this pandemic is real has no business being on this planet.
I like that.
We can argue on this. They just don't. So this pandemic is in control. We're not, Brian.
Right.
And you know that, and any intelligent person.
But isn't it now a perspective in many parts of this country that I'm kind of tired of wearing the mask, and this isn't quite as...
Look, I'm tired. Look, I'm tired, okay? And this is really around the 30-minute mark I wanted to get in. So
this is, by the way, the hour mark. This is going backwards in time. So we only have 30,
we have 30 minutes
right,
in the show.
Right.
Brian, I can count, okay? I don't care to count.
I just thought you thought we only were on the air for 30 minutes.
No, Brian.
Okay.
Jesus.
I apologize.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what they give me to work with, but I'll work with it. All right. So what happens is this. This pandemic throws everything, it's different. Not a living person on this planet, unless you are over 100 years old, has ever experienced a pandemic before. Ever. We haven't had one of this nature. So, you're saying what would happen. Here's what I worry about. The pandemic makes people either fearful or falsely brave. They're the only two conditions you can have. And when I say fearful, I don't mean, down on your knees, I'm never going out again, fearful. I'm just saying that you're concerned, right? And then there are people, obviously, and the funny thing is they're lining up along Trump lines. Trump, it's not out there. Our people, I'm going to call us our people, it is. But here's what I do know. You were the first person, Brian, in my social circle who gave me an answer to something I should have figured out on myself, but I didn't. And remember we were talking, this goes back a long way. This was like a day or two after George Floyd was killed. And, I kind of threw out, I don't get this. And you said, why this one? And you said, because everybody's home. And they were, what I mean, in the pandemic. And it was hard to escape. But I think it's even more than that. Everybody's got this pandemic on their mind. So do you say people will take to the streets? Absolutely. They have. They are.
What I'm saying is, but you've said it before, Dave, that the ones who are more likely to take to the streets would be the conservatives, which means that we as liberals should be staying home.
We never have to talk about this again. It's very simple. And we'll test your names. There is I believe he's 17-year-old murder of two murdered in Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah.
Kenosha.
Right.
Do you recall his name?
The two who were murdered?
No, the murderer.
Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse.
Okay. Kyle Rittenhouse, this is fact, not surmise. Kyle Rittenhouse appeared at a GOP rally in Wisconsin.
His mother did too, I believe.
Mother, everybody. And they were given a standing ovation. A standing ovation. I haven't said fuck a lot. Fuck Kyle Rittenhouse. Fuck his mother, not literally. And fuck everybody in that room who stood up. So absolutely, they have it. But here's the thing. Most white liberals aren't ready to use guns. Have you looked at Louisville? They've had some armed black insurrections.
Right. I'm going to take this further, Dave, and I don't even like saying this because I don't want to get in trouble. But it's obvious, at least I think we can agree that they're the ones with the guns. What happens? Okay, like, just imagine this. Here's a nice little thought experiment for everybody, but especially for you, Dave, because you know how crazy I get. So imagine a Louisville type situation. You have all these white policemen, and they're usually white.
True.
And
although you do get a black prosecutor.
Okay,
sometimes.
but let's just take for granted.
No,
and then you have.
I was being snarky
Okay.
there. No, go
And then
ahead.
you have maybe 10 or 15, 20, or even 100 Kyle Rittenhouses out there. But instead of, 1,000 liberals going eye to eye with him, one man in a white spacesuit comes out and he has a gas mask on. He opens up an envelope. He pours something out that looks like dust. And in 3 minutes, everybody holding a gun is put to sleep. Because I think that's what they have to worry more about on the other side, is that we aren't the ones with the guns, but we do have that
Scientists.
type. That if they wanted to take out people, that those guns won't matter when you get to biological and those kind of things.
And that is a viable but an extreme position.
Absolutely.
Those guns won't. The guns won't matter. The police guns won't matter. The vigilante guns won't matter if the military is on the opposite side. There's not a vigilante group in America tonight
That can handle
that
right.
has
I agree.
one millionth of the power that the U.S. military possesses.
But here's the issue with that, Dave. You're absolutely right. And we've discussed the military itself. We know there are many, many people, Mattis, right down the line they just don't like Trump. But there are, as you know, there are still many, many, many. So now you have a civil war within the army. Do we have something out of Russia, like a white army and a red army?
You know what I don't think, and I might be naive in this way, I don't think that, is if you're in the army, the mindset, and it's a good mindset for a war, is the person on the right and the person on the left are all you have, right? They will take care of you, you take care of them, and then, you expand out that way. It would be very hard, I think, for the military to turn on each other, much more difficult than it is for us, because there's all kinds of steps in there.
But wouldn't they have to go against the standing president? And that's tough. He's the commander in chief.
And I've said all along, I don't think so.
I think it's a little bit easier the other way around when you're defending the president. And by the way, if the military did defend the president, then we're screwed.
If you listen to what the leaders are saying, and the leaders are the ex-military, and look, just because you walk away as a general, as a chief of staff, doesn't mean that you're out in a retirement home somewhere.
Right.
You populated the military with people who thought like you when you were there. Okay? So they're still speaking for the military when they do that. And basically, to a person, they're saying, yes, normal is to follow the leadership of the president, who is the commander in chief. But just like Judge Amy, see how we come around to this? Just like Judge Amy probably will say to herself, there's a higher law in the Constitution, and that will be God's law. They will say there's a higher law than the president, and that will be the Constitution. Now, when I see the military, which Pentagon is actually, I just had it. Wait a minute, hold on. What did I say? Oh, it's 1.6 miles from our apartment, and we're surrounded by three relatively large bases here, which are within 10 miles. So I'll see them first, or among the first. If they come out, yeah, we got problems. But I don't see that happening, Brian.
I hope not, because...
and I can only hope.
Well, let's just... I guess the point is that I'm saying is, once something like that happens and Trump wins out, whatever, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that will happen, but let's suppose it did, then I think all bets are off, and I don't know what we do at that point.
Well, I would agree, and I'm going to take you before that. Like, the virus, again, I've said it, like so many Americans, it wasn't I didn't want it to be that bad. I'd never been in a pandemic before, right? Avian bird flu, I didn't think about it, right? AIDS, I don't want to dismiss anybody who died, but at that point, I did have a scare with it, but I wasn't having gay sex, male to male. I wasn't using intravenous needles. I was a drug user, but I didn't use needles. So it never really hit me, you know what I mean? So I didn't know that. But this pandemic, it changes everything. And Yeah, whatever you're, whatever you say, whatever I say, has to be. The word of caution is depending on where we are in the
Right.
pandemic,
By the way,
right?
my sinuses are bothering me, so every first thing I think that I have COVID. Just
Yeah, well, that's everybody.
you, know,
Uh, I'll
you
share
can't
this, and
even
then I
get
want
a
to get into
cold without
last night. And people, if I tell too many personal stories,
Yeah,
just
why don't you tell that story, Dave? Really
well, I
important.
want to get to you. I want to do the one you just did. Last night, I have a friend, very good friend, who is the merchandise director at the Birchmere, which is my favorite music venue, simply because with no traffic, I can get there in 12 minutes. And just about anybody who is anybody has played there. It's intimate. It normally can seat 2,500. It's down to 200 in the pandemic. And I and I went down there and I said, I need to talk to Stuart. They said, fine. And they said, but you have to get your temperature taken, which I think is great. Okay, that's one of the provisions they're doing. Now we all know that maybe that's, but I'm saying if it comes back high, do I have COVID? I have coughs. I make a joke out of it. I know it's not funny, and I know 204,000 people have died from it, and I know it's real. But sometimes it is so frightening that something like that exists that it's almost that macabre sense of gallows humor that we use. So, I understand. I mean, yeah, I mean, we talk about it a lot, which gives me the story tonight. Um, and I don't know what the purpose of this story is, so I want everyone who hears it to kind of tell me what they got out of it. So, as most people know, I live in Crystal City. My wife Judy. Um, that is 3 metro stops from Washington D.C. The third metro stop would be L'Enfant Plaza, which lets you off right on the air and space side of the National Mall, if you're familiar with D.C. DC just started reopening with its museums last Saturday. My wife is more, shall we say, more cautious than I am, has always been. And we just had agreement. We didn't go into DC from March until last Saturday. And we went in to see the new Eisenhower exhibit, or not exhibit, I'm sorry, the new Eisenhower Memorial. It was outside. I said, how do you feel? She said, I feel pretty good. I feel comfortable. I said, do you want to walk to the White House with me? She said, sure. We walk up. Funny story. I mean, I won't embarrass her. She had to go to the bathroom. So we went into Renwick, which is the art museum that's catacornered to the Museum of the Smithsonian. It's the only Smithsonian where you don't need tickets. I said, you feel comfortable there? Yes, she did. Um, so I've gone in every day since then because now, kind of can do that. And today we were going to go in. It was the second day. I mentioned before, American history. Smithsonian is my favorite museum in the entire world. And it was open today. It would be the first time that I'd been there since probably late February. I don't think I went in early March. And it shut down, of course, in March. So we got our tickets. They're timed tickets. It was for 11 a.m. And we leave. And Brian, you've been here. And, we have that underground, right?
Correct.
Where you can walk from our
Correct.
apartment to the metro. And, it wasn't a very nice day here. I don't know what it was like where everybody else was. So we're walking the underground and, you come down and then you go down the escalator and then you're in, the pre-station station, if you will, where the ticket machines are, or yeah, I guess you say ticket machine. And Brian, I'm bad with crowds. Even as a reporter, I used to get them wrong. I'm going to say roughly somewhere between 40 and 50 people standing there getting tickets. Now, I don't know that total. I've seen 50 people there since March, right?
Right.
And I said to Judy, I looked at her and I said, this is kind of nice in a way. I guess maybe DC is going to come back, because I mean, we're like everywhere else. We're being killed economically. And she kind of gave me that look like, I don't like this, like these are people. Well, we get on the metro, and it was one of the biggest surprises of my life. That's why I love living here in DC. Unbeknownst to me, we were on metro train filled with pro-Trump, anti-abortion, pro-evangelical, Franklin Graham, Billy Sons people. And I looked at my wife, and I could see concern in her eyes, and some of them did not have a mask on. So I said, okay, I'll try to be nice here. So I went up to the lead woman. I said it loud enough so the whole train car could hear it. Who was standing there talking with no mask on, and to a friend who has no mask on. She's standing up, so it's coming. And I said, ma'am, I said, look, I don't want to hassle you, but look, they're really strict here. I can tell you're not from D.C. And they're really pretty strict, and you need to put your mask on. Because, I don't want to see you get thrown off the train. Of course, I want to see her get thrown under the train, but that's beside the point. And she complied and everything. So we get off the train and say, wow, that's interesting. And again, if you've been in D.C., anyone, and you've been to the Smithsonian and you've gotten off at the Smithsonian Metro stop, you come up for the ground and you're right in the middle of the mall, right? Now, for those who haven't, Keith, other people, I don't know if you've been there, on one end of the National Mall is the Capitol building. On another end that you can see is the Washington Monument, and this area in between, and it goes beyond that. It goes to Lincoln Memorial, then it shoots off to, it's not the mall, but it shoots off to the White House. So it's all right there. So we get out, we're walking, and Brian, that 40 group, easily, 9,000, easily, maybe more. At least 60% not masked. So I looked at Jude, I said, you want to go back? And she said, well, yeah. I said, really? I said, I'll find us a way around. Well, finally, I just had it. I said, I can't do this. Now, I've been protesting a long time. I'm not saying that's good. It's who I am. I'm not saying I'm right. It started in 1968. In some interesting ways, Gary was kind of there with me. He's, here tonight is there. And I've been doing it off and on pretty much since '68. So I never invented a chant. I done hey Ho Chi Minh, the NFL is going to win, or fuck you Agnew, or Dick Nixon before he dicks you, or and on up, right? But I got really mad, and I decided I was going to start a chant, and this was a chant I came up with. Where the fuck's your mask? I'm sure if Jesus was here, he would ask. Where the fuck's your mask? I'm sure if Jesus were here, he would ask. Now, to me, that made sense, right?
Right. Jesus
was, for the people. Well, needless to say, there were some people that objected to that. And so we got into a minor discussion. And when I tried to point out, I said, what's upsetting you? Being my dumb self. What's upsetting you? Jesus, Jesus Christ, the Jesus Christ Christianity. And don't you think, if you think about it, he's always thinking of others. And if Jesus were here right now, he would maybe need to wear the mask because he's the Son of God, but he probably would wear the mask.
Jesus don't think like that, Dave. You know that. He hates those kind of people.
Look, and so finally, Judy just whispered in my ear. She said, before we get killed, may we please leave here? And, you defer to your wife, and we went. Came back out after being in American history for 90 minutes, and it was kind of fun in a strange sort of way. I really, Brian, so much wanted to go back out in that crowd and ask, could I have some mic time? And of course, I wouldn't do that. Not because I wouldn't do it. In non-pandemic times, I'd have been right there.
You don't want to lose your life over your anger.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly what my wife said. My wife does not curse much.
At you, she does. I've heard her many times.
Well, at me, yes. At me, she does. But I'm talking about in general.
I know the favorite word she has for you, and it always begins with an A.
Asshole? Yes, it does. But that's to me.
I like how she says it, too. She goes, asshole.
It's an endearing charm we've thrown at each other for 47 years.
I love when she says that to you.
But going across, actually, she used it, Brian, so you gave me a good
really?
segue.
So I'm right.
Yeah, she did, not at me.
I know she loves calling you that. So
yeah, this was an exact quote from my wife. As I said, she said, I'm not getting sick. She didn't say losing my life. She said, I'm not getting sick because of those assholes. So that was, and
that's true. It's really,
it was interesting though,
the bottom line.
Against all not my better judgment. My judgment said, and I took her around a back way, to get out of that crowd. And so, but I said, you feel comfortable. And at one point, I actually made her cross the street because even though she said we'd be comfortable, I see them coming. They're all over, right? They're everywhere. They're these Jesus, whatever the fuck they are. Well, I kind of did this deliberately. I wanted to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and that's honestly that's where the metro stop was. We were going to the archive stop, but because where we would come out, this is not secret place, we would come out and we'd pass Donald Trump's International Hotel, and I always have when Richard Nixon was president, and forever after until he died. Whenever he would appear on TV, I would do this.
There you go.
Right? I would do this. Donald Trump deserves more. So I do this. I've done it twice in Donald Trump's presence. I don't know if he saw me. I don't think so, but I don't care. And so I was going to do that. And indeed, I did. As I walked down, there weren't that many. There were maybe 15, 20 people in red, white, and blue and Trump gear and unmasked taking pictures of their Lord and Savior's hotel. And I don't think any of them saw me, and I don't care if they did or not. But one of the most moving moments, I think, in my life. My life's been pretty exciting, so I don't know if I can say most movements of it. I see this young black woman on a bicycle, is riding down Pennsylvania Avenue, right? And she just let them have it with the middle finger and words. That middle finger was so high, it looked like the goddamn Statue of Liberty, right? And I just turned to them and I said, and then Judy pulled me down. I said, and I fucking agree with her.
Right.
So, anything can happen in DC. Now that was just a kind of a funny story of saying, I really today it was hammered home. They aren't us. I don't want them to be us. I don't want to be part of them. They're killers. They're disgraceful. I've got a video coming tomorrow. I hope that some of it I couldn't get close enough. I'll be posting it on Divided We Stand. I have some, but I was pretty far away. And you know when they really lost me, Brian?
When's that?
This nice little sweet woman on a screen, giant screen, with her lovely husband, who probably has sex with donkeys while she performs with the Moscow male choir.
Are you speaking from experience?
No, but conservatives seem to do
right.
that. I think
they always have that weird shit
experiences
going on
with the Falwells.
Right.
Yes. I don't think Judy and I actually invite the pool boy in. We have a pool boy here. We haven't done that recently. They apparently have.
And you're not in the habit of sharing or watching either.
Not with my wife.
Right.
We won't go any further than that. Not with my wife. But anyway, this little, couldn't have been better scripted, Southern little, she said, ain't this America? These people now, they worship pornography. I said, wow, I like pornography. No. I mean, if you could listen to it, it was pathetic. It was sad. It's why we're divided. It's why I don't want to unite with them. And we're going to be divided now. We're going to be divided no matter who gets the election. It doesn't matter who wins. Now, real quickly, let's bring it back. Okay, so here's we're talking tonight about the Supreme Court. Here's what I think will happen. It's only what I think. I can't say it will. There will be a very quick vote. Judge Amy will be approved. We'll go into the election. My feeling is that, and I intend to work very hard, and I encourage everyone else who feels the way I do between now and then, to tell every woman in America who doesn't understand it, that if Judge Amy is going to be the judge, which she is, at that moment, I would almost bet all of my certainty there are 5 votes to repeal Roe v. Wade. But it doesn't stop there. With that Supreme Court, not a gay man or woman in America is safe. I don't care what laws have been enacted. I do not care. That's not a conservative court now. That is a Pentecostal evangelical court. And the last I knew, Brian, homosexuality is a sin in their Bible, and they're going to follow their Bible over their Constitution. The only hope, John Roberts, I don't put him in that category, and the only hope would be Gorsuch,
Right.
maybe, and
And that's not going to happen
if indeed we we do not win, and it is winning, it is a war, and winning to me is twofold. Winning to me, the most important battle is the Biden battle, and equally, not equally, but a little bit under, is the Senate battle. I intend to donate all my money. I've been waiting to close races in the Senate where maybe it would be a difference. Maybe it'll make a difference. I hope. There's no reason, Corey. Corey, I know you, Booker in New Jersey. You're a good senator. I'm not giving you any money. You're going to win. I'm going to give my money to people that are running in Montana, and the largest contribution I will make will be to Jamie Harrison in South Carolina, to do everything I can financially with the limited money that I have to make sure that Lindsey Graham doesn't come back to Washington, D.C. Because I think there's a better chance of Lindsey not coming back to Mitch McConnell. But I'm going to give money to Amy McGrath just for fighting the good fight. So I would hope that those groups I mentioned will fight. It will energize the Democrats more than it will the Republicans. And I think there's some logic to that. I don't think anybody, look, no, everybody who cares about abortion was going to vote because they knew Trump was their boy, right? I don't see him picking up any new votes. But I do see people who kind of say, well, this doesn't involve me. I would hope, and this is my message tonight to every woman who's had an abortion, you had it for your own reasons. Think about if you couldn't have had it, or if you had to go. And see, the thing is, Brian, and I don't think people get that. It's not that they're stupid. It's just they don't get it. You're not going to outlaw abortions. You're going to outlaw the safe performance of abortions. And we're going to go back to back alley butchers.
Right.
You're not going to stop abortion.
And yeah, and
Interesting statistics. I don't know if you saw them, Brian, released this week. Abortions drop. Think about this. Abortions drop under Democratic leadership. And, that doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
But it does, because when the Democrats are leading, they talk about sexual education. They don't talk. What the fuck do the Republicans talk about? Abstinence. Yeah, that worked. That would have worked for me when I was, 14, 15, 16, 17. No, that wouldn't have worked. It's a bullshit idea.
Yeah, well, abstinence kind of worked back in the late 1800s because people got married when they were 14 or 15.
Well,
so you really didn't have to wait too long.
And look, let's not kid ourselves. There was a hell of a lot of sex going on back then, too. But that's for another day.
Right.
And the Republicans, they don't think so. It would be interesting how many senators, Republican senators, we know the president have financed abortions for their mistresses
Right.
or their wives. But I think it goes beyond that. So tonight, maybe to really make the point about abortion, and then, Brian, you'll close the show. The way I feel about abortion is this. If you think abortion is illegal, if you think it's wrong, I have a very simple answer for you. Don't have one. Don't have one. Nobody's forcing you to have an abortion.
Dave.
But it goes beyond that. The most important female on the earth right now, and I'm sorry, wives, if this upsets you, is not my wife. We've been together 47 years, and I love her dearly. But the most important female on the planet right now is not in the United States. She's in Australia. She'll be 13 this December. I know that she's turning.
And Scott
sexually
Morrison's
aware.
a Pentecostal, so you better watch out.
There's a difference between Scott Morrison and this. But here's the thing, Brian. I want Audrey, when she becomes sexually active, and she will, hopefully not at 13, but it's not. All of a sudden, boys aren't quite as yucky as they were when she was 11. Her brother's still yucky, so that's different. But boys, I want her to have that option of a safe abortion, if that seems to be what she and her mother and her father agree on. And I will leave with this on the abortion question. as I said, you won't stop abortion. You will stop safe abortions.
Well
So
said.
AOC is a done deal, ladies and gentlemen. Not AOC, I'm sorry, ACB or ABC or whatever the fuck her name is.
Conan Barrett.
Yeah,
Conan the
Conan the Barbarian.
Barbarian.
It's going to be all that matters.
Just
It
think.
hasn't changed the game any,
Right.
ladies and gentlemen.
Right. Well,
We must elect Joe Biden. We must.
mm,
We
we
must. It
must.
doesn't mean the war ends, and we'll go another show on that, Brian.
Dave,
But this is a huge battle. We must elect Joe Biden. We must try everything. I mean, I can't vote in states to get Democrats, and then we begin to make America back on the road that it should be. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for
Right.
listening to me. I had nothing else to do on a Saturday night. You made my Saturday night, and just understand that I am working for you. I don't want to work with
Right.
Brian.
Okay. Well,
I
Dave.
despise him, but I do to speak to you. Oh, back to you, Brian. You have
Right.
26
Well,
seconds.
Dave, you'll find this interesting because I started off with the Dark Ages in my opening commentary, and I think I'll end it in the Dark Ages. And this was from, I believe, 2016, when I first started talking about the problems with Trump with Dave. Actually, it was 2015, I suppose. But
Yeah,
Dave was known as Pastor Dave back in the days, and this was a great one. And Dave did this riff, by the way. I have, this animation thing with Dave and Sarah Palin, but it was great because he did this riff right before Ronnie and I were going to New York, and he was playing this game about these, lunatic right-wing evangelicals. So I think I'm going to leave you folks with this because it's entertaining. I just want to make sure the volume.
One thing, Brian, I'm not cutting in. Darlene, look, you've been wonderful. You come listen to us and listen to us ramble. I can't guarantee you that Biden will win. I guarantee that people like Brian and myself and you and many of our listeners, we everything can. I forget. Do you remember where Darlene lives, Brian? You knew her.
Oklahoma, I believe.
If the pandemic lifts enough and Trump does win, and you still want to fight, and we will still fight, get a hold of me through Messenger or whatever, and we'll set you up in a safe place here in Crystal City, and you and I and everybody else will go out there and we'll fight Trump. And Darlene, also remember that the first impeachment didn't work, but the Democrats can impeach him every single day. And he has impeachable stuff. I'm sorry, Brian.
All right. Okay. Yes, Darlene verified that she's from Oklahoma. So,
Okay.
yeah. Darlene.
Very good. Go Okies.
Okies. All right. So we're going to finish up with some artistry, some animation, and hopefully I'm going to try to make sure that the volume comes out, and we'll see how it goes.
Brian, could I hear it? I haven't heard a damn thing on the animation that you.
Well, we're gonna try. So let me turn myself off and you off and keep the audio on. So here we go.
I'm good looking even in animation.
Listen now and hear the sacred word of Yahweh.
Sorry, Brian. I'm not hearing it on my end. You probably
Yahweh
You'll see it.
will
I
come
see it. I just don't hear it.
to judge both the slow and the dead, and the quick and the living. Some of ye have been to the modern city of sin. Today's Babylon. Today's Sodom. Today's Gomorrah. That would be New York City. If you have been to New York in any of its boroughs, Yahweh says, repent now of thine evil ways, or ye shall burn in the everlasting fires down below. And ye say, well, I will put off, because Yahweh will not be here. But I say unto you, my brother, and I say unto you, my sister, who knows the hour of Yahweh? who knows the ways of Yahweh. So what you must do is you must bend your head. Get down on your knees.
Brian, before you go to the bumper,
Yeah.
People can still hear us?
Hold on.
Yeah, make sure they can hear us.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 things about that.
The ways of Yahweh, that was it.
I remember. I couldn't hear it. I remember.
Well, you'll hear it when it goes in.
No, it was quite clever. Yeah, I'll listen to it. 3 things I want to point out to you, Brian, because you're not the most observant person in the world.
Okay.
Number 1, did you notice the way that the woman who could have been our vice president looked with longing, love, and lust in her eyes when she
Yes,
turned?
I saw that.
That was number 1.
Wasn't that amazing? She looked at you with lust.
Love's more important than lust. Secondly, and I don't mean to sound sexist, but she had a well-developed chest. Would you agree?
She had.
Are you blind? It either was well-developed or it wasn't.
She had Titanic breasts. Yes.
Yes. And did you notice that I was watching very carefully as she looked at me with longing and lust and love, that certain ends of that breast actually got more pointed, which is probably an arousal sign. So I took that kind of as
Everything you want to know about sex, but we're afraid to last.
And the third thing,
Did you
Brian,
write
my last
that
comment is,
book?
what I found most fascinating, she was looking at me with awe. She was on the other side, but it looked like she said, "This man speak much truth. Let's stop and do something else." Okay. Which is what we need to do. We need to stop and let these people do something else.
Right. All right. I guess the creative part of the show came at the end, folks. So, yeah. I think we'll just end it there. We kind of have like a Lenny Bruce ending. See you later, folks.
Funk, thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, deep pressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, I late in the thick of it all. I wonder how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest.
Now you're almost semi-dancing. Don't do that. In case you had a wrong switch, just sit there.
Got myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Myself a cup of coffee, sip of water when it's softly, cleansing me as stress I hold.
Now, if I could right now, Brian, if I could take this split.
Oh, you're on now. Jesus Christ.
I needed me some rainy days, so I needed me some rainy days, so rest for the weary, so we teary eyes realize life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and reconnect to myself and all that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So while I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress. The ring be looking like when blessings drop in. And so I got myself a cup of coffee, sip of water in it soft.